Hey guys, welcome back to another Unreal Engine 4 tutorial. We're back going into our inventory system for our point and click game, just to kind of show you where we're at. Again, we have the ability to fade in our character if we touch this trigger, and it teleports us in a random location. We have our overall inventory system not in place yet, but we got the menu bar. And we are also able to pick up items. So let's go ahead and grab some items too. So we can pick them up and recognize that they're items that we can have. And we can have ones that are not recognized, but we just don't have them showing up in our inventory system at all. So that's what we're going to fix today. So the first part of it is us going back into the HUD. And one of the easier things that we have to do at this point is just copy and paste this menu bar animation set for our timelines. Just because the inventory items, they're going to follow the same kind of animation once they're drawn. So they'll both be below, and when you move your mouse down, it'll rise with the bar. So they kind of want to do the same exact kind of animation. So let's go ahead and just rename this timeline. So if we just left click on it, hit F2, we'll name this inventory item animation. And then we'll name this one almost identical, so inventory item animation, but reverse. There we go. And now all we have to do is really reference it in the necessary parts of our HUD. So right alongside where we have our hide bar animation and show bar animations, depending on where the mouse location is, it's pretty much where we're going to do it. So let's grab the inventory item animation over here on the left. Let's drag that out as a getter. We're going to set the play rate. Whoops. So we're going to set the play rate to 1. And this is all done on the top row first. And we're going to drag this out. We're going to do a reroute just for organization. And we're going to set the timeline length here. I set it to 0.5. That one works for me. Oops. And let's just connect this up. And then we're actually going to do another reroute here. So drag this guy out and reroute node. And we're going to play. And then we're going to grab the reverse timeline. We're going to do a getter for that. And we're just going to set this guy's playback position. We're going to set it at 0 just so it's automatically set to 0. We can just leave this guy like that. And now we gotta do almost the same exact thing, except for the reverse. So let's grab the reverse again. So inventory item animation reverse. We'll set the play rate, and 2 works here. So we're gonna set its play rate to 2. We're gonna grab a reroute. We're gonna play it. Oops. And then we're going to set the playback position of the inventory item animation. And we're going to set its playback position to 0, kind of like what we did for the reverse. Okay. So that's all set up for that. So we got the animation in place for when we actually pick up the item. When we actually draw it, it'll follow that animation. So the next few things we got to do is actually implementing the ability to draw these items and knowing which items to draw at certain stages. So let's start with this. What we need to do is create a new custom event here in the HUD. Let me hit Control S. And I do know making custom events on my build for one reason or another sometimes crashes my machine, so we'll see if it happens or not. So add custom event. We're going to name this custom event set inventory slot. Perfect. And now it's at this point where we're going to have to create a new macro. So let's hit macro up here. We'll name this set inventory slots. And something we are going to need to keep in mind are the names we are giving these objects. So backpack, top hat, jump rope, things like that. Those are what we're going to need to keep in mind for right now. So for input, we're going to need two different inputs. First one's going to be an executable. We're just going to call this in. And the second one is going to be a name. And we're going to call this item name. For output, we're going to just throw that over there. But for purposes here for outputs, I am putting 5 different outputs, all name variables. So let's add that here. 5 just because there are 5 items for this inventory system for right now. So we'll name the first one slot 1 name, and then slot 2 name, all the way through slot 5 name. Slot 4, whoops, and then slot 5 name. Got that going. And it's at this point where we're going to need to make a good amount of variables here. But we'll leave that for later. We'll do that in just a little bit. What we're going to first do is compile this, go back into our event graph, throw in that macro. And what we need to do now is we need to make a new reference. So up here for our event begin play, where we create our character reference, it's at this point we're going to need to make a reference to our inventory system itself. So let me open up that blueprint class. So under BP underscore inventory, that's the one we're going to need a reference to in the HUD. Let's go ahead and drag out from character reference. We're going to do get all actors of class. The class name is going to be BP underscore inventory. Drag this out from out actors, do a get. Drag this out, we're going to do a cast. Now we're going to promote this to the variable. And I'm just going to call this inventory reference. Compile that, Control S to save. And the reason why we need to make that is because we need to input an item name. So from inventory reference, we're going to do a get, and then we're going to grab its item name. Oops. And that item name is what's going to be input into our item name input for our macro there. So next, what we have to do is actually call the set inventory slot, and we're actually going to call this when the player actually makes collision with an item. And so once we see that happen, where it says add items to inventory, that's in our inventory. So go to the add items inventory macro that we created here, or function I should say. And we basically need to call that event. So for right now, we do have a HUD reference already called from previous tutorials. So let's grab the HUD reference, pull that out, and we'll do set inventory slot. So now every time the player makes a collision with an item it can pick up, it's going to add that item to the inventory list, it's going to destroy the actor, and then it's going to set the inventory slot. Basically what we want to do for the set inventory slot, we want to see how many items are currently in the array of our items, and we want to set the appropriate item name from there. So this is where things may get a little complicated. This is where the real meat and potatoes of this whole project is going to take place in. So I'll try to go slow. So the first thing we need to do is go back into this macro. So let me eliminate some of these other tabs so it doesn't get confusing. So the first thing we're going to do is in our HUD, we're going to first create a bunch of variables. In total, we're going to make about 6 name variables. So let's change the type to name. The first one is just going to be called slot item name. And then the next 5 are going to be slot 1 item name, slot 2 item name, all the way to 5. So slot 1 item name, slot 2 item name, slot 3 item name, whoops, slot 4 item name, and then slot 5 item name. And we're going to make all these variables public except for the slot item name. So slot 1 item name all the way through slot 5 item name. We'll just go check the I here so that they're open and public. And now we can actually start scripting here. So let's grab this slot item name. We basically want to set that to the item name being input by the player. So when the player comes in and touches an inventory item in the environment, that item that he touches and is approved to be an item that we can collect and be in our inventory system, that one will be assigned the name slot item name at that time. So once that happens, this is where we need to start making branches and checking how many actual inventory items we have and where we have to draw this new inventory item. So let's grab our inventory item reference, and we need to grab, whoops, that's slot item name, not inventory item reference. Let's grab that. We're going to need to know the number of inventory items, because each time we grab one, it increases it by 1. So you'll have 0, and then 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, all the way up until 5. So we got the number of inventory items, and this is where we want to check to see if it's equal to 0. And that's where we're going to start a branch. Oops. So we're basically saying, hey, do we have no items right now? And if so, this is where we're going to actually set these 5 item names. And we're going to basically set these to default. So slot item 2, alt left click drag, slot 3, slot 4, all the way to slot 5. And we're going to set these to default none. So if this is true, just connect all these guys. They don't have to be in a specific order, but I like doing it in numerical order just to keep everything concise and clean. But then now what we need to do is check to see if they have 1 inventory item. Because if they don't have 0, we want to check if they have 1. So let's copy everything here. Just the inventory item reference. I'm sorry, just the inventory reference, the number of inventory items, the check to see how many the equivalent to, and then the branch associated with it. Just copy all that. We're going to change the 0 to a 1. So we're going to check to see if the player has 1 inventory item here. And if he does, that's where we're going to go ahead and set the slot item 1 name. So alt left click drag slot item 1 name, or slot 1 item name I should say. And we're going to set that to slot item name. And something else we need to create now, I'm not too sure if we had made this already in the prior tutorial, so let me check. No, we haven't. So what we need to have set up for right now are temporary slot names. We're going to do this in the character reference just because that's how I originally had it set up. And these slot item temporary names are just for when we actually get working the ability to swap items around in your inventory system. That's not something we're going to do today, but I do want to set up the logic for it just so we don't have any hiccups in the future. So with that being said, we're going to have to create 5 additional name variables within our p_c_character class. So let's create a variable, make it a name, call this slot 1 item name temp, and do that for slot 2 item, slot 3, all the way to 4. A little bit time consuming, but that's okay. And we're also going to make these variables public as well. So just make sure you check the eyes just so they're open. Compile. Control S to save everything to play it safe. Now we can go back into our HUD. And now we got to call the character reference. And we got to get slot 1 item name temp. We're going to set that. And what we're going to set that to is slot 1 item name. So the slot 1 temp and the slot 1 item name are going to be the same exact thing. And we're going to have to do this same exact thing for slot item 2, 3, 4, and then 5. So with that being said, let's continue. Copy and paste this logic here. Change the 1 to a 2. Drag the false in. And now if this is true, we need to set the slot item, so slot 2 item name. We're going to set that to slot item name. Just organize some things here. And then we're going to grab the character reference again. Do slot 2, set that temp name to slot item name as well. And then copy and paste this logic again. So this is one of the things that I don't like about the system so far. It's going to be annoying for me personally, and I don't have a workaround for this just yet. But depending on how many items you'll have in your entire game that are collectible, this is usually a good use of an array, but for my purposes, my point-and-click game, it's only going to have maybe 20 to 30 collectible items that you'll use for puzzle purposes. So for me, I'm going to have to create 30 of these, which is kind of ridiculous, kind of a large amount. And I'm sure there's a way to work around that, but for right now, this is how my system works. So if you're able to find a workaround that caters to what you're needing, then definitely go for it. But for right now, this is what I'm using. So let's put in the false into this new branch. Change this to 3. And then we got to set slot 3 item name. You got to set that to slot item name. Then same goes for the character reference temp name for slot item 3. Just move that. Okay. We also got to set that to slot item name. And then for slot 4, whoops, change this to 4. Set slot 4 item name. Set that to slot item name. And then same thing with the character reference for the temporary. Oops. And make that slide item name as well. And then last but not least, slot 5. So set slot 5 item name to slot item name. And same thing goes with the character reference for the temp. And there you go. And then finally, just in case I need it for the output, we'll just match these up. So grab all of these slot item names. and plug them in accordingly. So slot 1 item name goes into slot 1 name, slot 2, and then 3, 4, and 5. Just in case I need them. And there we go. So that's the main portion of the set inventory slots. So again, what this is doing, as soon as the player makes contact with an inventory item that can be collectible, it sets that item name to slot item name. So say, for example, we pick up the top hat. So slot item name is going to be top hat. And then if we already have, let's say our inventory items is equivalent to 2, we're going to set the top hat to the slot item 2. So that's basically what this is doing, but for all 5 positions. So we'll hit Control Save. And actually, I misspoke earlier. For my game, this is as far as it needs to be, only 5 inventory slots. So say you have 6 or 7, you'll have to create the 6th and 7th one. Where it's going to get tricky is actually when we actually need to draw the actual items. That's something we're going to do next, actually. So let's go ahead and start that process, because assigning the inventory slots and setting these inventory slots, they're done. This is it. If you want 5 inventory slots in total. So let me exit out of that, and here's our macro in effect. And now what we can do, we need to call from the main draw. So let me get these out, because again, in the HUD primarily focuses on everything from the event receive draw HUD. So let's add another executional pin. And what we need to do here is get an inventory reference. We need to get item name. We need to do a branch. But the branch needs to come from whether or not the name of the inventory item that we have. So we're going to do not equal name. So we're checking to see if the inventory item name does not equal none. We're going to branch out. So let's give everything some space here. So from the pin we just made from this sequence from our event receive draw HUD, but drag that into our branch. Let's make this organized a little bit. And as from here, we're going to need another sequence. It's going to have in total 5 pins, so 0 through 4. And then connecting to the true here. And now we need to basically create macros to draw each type of item and tell it, hey, what are we drawing at this point? So, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to take a quick 10-minute break or something, and then when I come back, we'll begin this next sequence. So it's only going to be a second where the time difference will be. So I'll see you guys in just a moment. Okay, guys, and we're back. So what we need to work on now, because we have everything set up for setting the inventory slots, what we have to focus on now is actually drawing the icons and images that represent each item. And we're going to do this from the event draw receive draw HUD. And what we're going to need to do is create 5 macros. We're going to do it 1 macro at a time and just copy the contents of each one. So let's just create the first macro. We're going to call this draw inventory slot 1. And then within here, for input, we're going to need a executable. We'll just call that in. And then we're going to need another input, and it's going to be name. And we're going to call this slot 1 name. And this is where we're going to set up basically a good amount of branches here to see which item we're talking about, which one we're working with. So for right now, we don't need the output. We're just going to draw that out. So the first thing we're going to need to do is drag out slot 1 name. We're going to do equal. And the first thing we're going to check to see is if it's equal to the name backpack, since backpack's the first one we see here. So I'll just copy and paste that as it's spelled, just so we eliminate that kind of error. paste it into the equal here, and then connect the in to that. And now before we actually start drawing and actually telling us what textures to draw, we'll just set up all of the conditions first. So let's copy and paste the equal to, reinsert slot one name to the top, change that to top hat, copy and paste just how it's spelled, drag out a branch, put the false into here, copy and paste again, put slot one name into the top. Number 3 is jump rope. And what I was talking about earlier, this is the section where you would need to have each item get ready to be drawn. So if you had 30 items, you would have basically 30 conditions and 30 textures to draw. So it's one of the flaws in the system, but since right now we have only 5 items, it's not too big of a deal. But let me know if you find a workaround or know of a workaround for this, just so it can help us all here. So we have the jump rope in. Now we have to do the 4th one. 4th item is book. And then the 5th one, last but not least, is the key. Then put the branch in. And connect it here. And now all we have to concern ourselves with is on the true of each one, we have to draw that specific texture. So let's go into our content browser. Let's go to our textures so we have them. First one is the backpack. So let's have that selected. And then back into this draw inventory slot 1 macro. We're going to do a draw texture simple. Put that in. For the texture, we're going to choose the one we have selected. For screen X, I have 30. And then for the Y position, we're going to create an actual variable for this. So let's create a variable. It's going to be a float. And we're going to call this inventory items Y position. Because each item is going to have their own Y position, because they're all going to be on the same level, but each of them are going to have their own different X positions. So just keep that in mind as well. So with that being created, let's do a get, plug that variable in, and then for scale, we're going to change it to 0.275. That's the one that worked for me. So we got that going. So now we have to do this basically 5 times in a row, but for each different texture. So let me just copy this 5 times. Okay. So the first one's the backpack, the second one's the top hat. So let's grab that texture, plug it into this one, and then plug the true in here. Third one is jump rope. Plug that in. 4th one is the book. Plug that in. And the 5th one is the key. So plug that in as well. And then plug it in. And just for organizational purposes, we'll just do that. And then for output, there's no need for an output, so we can leave that alone. To compile, go back into our event graph. Let's grab the macro for draw inventory slot 1. Connect that there. And then going into slot 1 name is going to be the actual variable, slot 1 item name. Do a get of that. Plug that in. So this might be a good time to test. So let's see if we actually pick up an item, if it'll get drawn into our slot 1 position. So alright, so there's our slot 1 right there. So the backpack is up there for some reason. So that's something we're going to have to fix for sure. And the reason why, because inventory items Y position set to 0, we actually have to make that set to 725. That's my bad. So let's compile again. Let's try it one more time. So it should be there. I'm not sure why it's not animating now. So that's the problem we're facing at the moment. Let's see. Let me just investigate this real fast for us. Let's see. Okay. Aha. Okay. This is what we're doing wrong. Remember the second section of menu bar animations here? Let's actually change the comment to while we're at it. It's going to be inventory item animations. And what we need to do, because we're using the menu Y position, we actually need to update that to the inventory items Y position, the one we made earlier. So let's just update these two animations with that instead. Hardcode 625 in here. Move that. Okay, and now we need to do that down here as well. And then inventory items Y position, hardcode 730 in. Okay, let's see with that update. Let's see if the inventory is working now. So let's grab the backpack, and there it is. So it looks a little too high up, so what I might change it to is 725 instead. No, I'm sorry, not 7. I'll leave that alone. It's here. We'll try 635. Let's try it one more time. So it looks good, but for some reason it's animating very strangely. Let's hardcode this to 730. Oh, okay, here's where else I'm sorry about this, we're messing up a lot here. So see where it says menu Y position for the lerp? Let's change to item Y position. Make that 725. And then we'll do that again down here. There we go. Let's try it one more time. There we go. Kind of makes a snap. I think I know why. Let's make this 725. Let's make this 725. And then up here, we'll make this 635 in here. Now there shouldn't be any more snapping because the numbers are the same now. There you go, perfect. and it goes away. Say whoop. The reverse should be a little faster, if I'm being honest. Let's set its play rate to 4. Let's try it again. There we go. We'll change it to 3, but we're not going to focus on it too much more now. But now we actually see that the item's being drawn. And let's say, for example, we don't pick up the backpack first. Let's say we pick up the top hat first. There's our top hat. But then if we pick up the backpack, it's still only just the top hat being drawn. So that's why we need to continue with our HUD. So essentially all we really need to do is create macros for each inventory slot. So let's create another macro. We'll call it draw inventory slot 2. And same inputs and same output for the same as the draw inventory slot 1. So we need a executable pin and we need an input name pin. So executable, we'll name that in. For the name, I'll just put slot. What do we name it for this one? Slot 1 name, we'll do slot 2 name. And we can move the output away here. And we can essentially just copy and paste this. Plug it in appropriately. And then all we really need to change is the X position. And this is where we're actually going to make some actual variables for this. So we're going to make 4 new floats. First one's going to be called inventory slot 2 X position. Compile. We're going to set that to 150. Make a new variable. Do inventory slot 3 X position. Compile. We're going to make this a value of 250. Do another one. Inventory slot 4 X position. Compile. We'll make this 350. And then last but not least, slot inventory slot 5 X position. And that's going to be 450. So compile, make that 450. And since we're dealing with the slot 2, let's get the slot 2 X position and just plug it up. Almost done. There we go. Compile, go back to our event graph, draw that macro out, input that, and then we just need to grab slot 2 item name. There we go. And now we basically need to rinse and repeat. So let's do that now. Let's see if we can just, are we able to just copy and paste these things? No, I don't want to do that. Let's create a new macro. Oops. Draw inventory slot 3. For the input, again, 2 of them, 1 executable, name that in. And then keeping up with tradition here, we'll do slot 3 name and make that a name input. We don't need the output. And again, we can just copy and paste it. Plug them up accordingly. Let's compile and save, just to play it safe. And then we just need to get the inventory slot 3 exposition. Put that in instead of the slot 2 that we copied over. And it's very important that we be concise and consistent here, because it can cause a lot of problems if we mess things up here. Okay. There we go. Go into our event graph, draw that macro out, plug it up, get slot 3 item name, plug it in. There we go. Draw inventory slot 4. Again, we need an executable. Name that in. Need a name. Call that slot 4 name. Don't need anything for the output. Copy and paste this. Line it up. Plug things back in. And then change the X position. So swap out the slot 3 position for the slot 4 position. This is one of the more tedious parts, but so be it. There we go. Compile, Control S to save, go back into our event graph. Let's make a little bit more room. Let's draw the new macro. Then hook up slot 4 item name into that. Then one more time. Macro, call it draw inventory slot 5. 2 inputs, 1 executable, call that in. And then slot 5 name. We can go in here, copy paste that, move the output just so it's not in the way. Line things up, plug things in. And then put in the 5th slot 5 exposition. So let's put that in. One more. Compile, save, go back into our event graph. Put in that draw inventory slot 5 macro, plug it in, get the slot 5 item name, and put it in. And there we go. So right there, that's the meat and potatoes of this. So if we hit Control S, we can basically pick up all 5 items, and they'll be drawn in order that they've been picked up in. So there's 1, there's 2, there's 3, there's 4, and there's 5. Okay, so 5 is not working, so let's see why. So slot 5 might be something to do with the inventory slot names. Oh, here we go. In the inventory slot item names, I forgot to change this 4 to a 5. That's gonna happen. So let's try this again. And there we go. And we can pick these up in any order. So let's say we'll do jump rope, book, hat, backpack, and key. Jump rope, book, hat, backpack, and key. So that's going to be it for this tutorial. This one's one of the more difficult ones, I would say, to follow, so hopefully you follow along okay. Definitely rewatch the video, because what we're going to do next, it is going to get complicated as well, because the next thing we're going to work on is being able to swap the positions of these items. So basically getting the ability to rearrange your inventory system, and rearrange which items are in which slots and things like that. But that'll be for next time. So all I want to say for right now is thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate it, and I'll see you guys next time. Hey guys, thanks for watching this tutorial. I want to say thanks for subscribing if you haven't already. So if you haven't, hit the subscribe button above, or click on me to subscribe to Devin Level Design. I also want to thank you guys for supporting the channel. I want you guys to continue commenting, sharing, retweeting, all that social media. And if you enjoyed the contents of this tutorial, like the video, comment. If you have any problems, let me know. And again, thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!